Fantasmagorium show is proud to present Guns, Martinis, Gadgets, and Guns. In the seventh outing by Roger Moore was getting to be old Roger Moore. Roger Moore knew that Roger Moore was being very Roger Moore. So, Duran Duran. Today, we celebrate the 40th anniversary of Roger Moore's swan song, A View to a Kill. My name is Scotty R37. My opposite number, Catherine, is here. And Steve may drop by in a blimp. It's so fun because we've reviewed all of the James Bond movies. And so I didn't even have to write an intro. I just used the one that we had from before. So that's great. But it's been a hot minute since we've talked anything James Bond. And so
Yes.
With an anniversary just passed, we're actually bracketed because it came out on the 24th in the United States, but in June in the UK. So we're happily in between the release dates of 1985's A View to a Kill. Before we get into that, I was wondering, Kat, is there any news that's been happening on the Bond front since your good friends at Amazon have acquired the intellectual property?
Yes, last month at CinemaCon at the Amazon panel, they did make a mention of Bond, saying that the two new people they've appointed, what's her name from Sony?
Amy Pascal.
Amy Pascal, and what's his name? I can't remember. Have been. See, I'm on top of this, but they're in London right now, currently working on it. So it's an actual pre-production update. They're actively working on scripts and all that kind of stuff. So we should expect more news probably by the end of the year or something solid. I imagine they don't want that will have a release by 2027, perhaps at the earliest.
Well, I am looking forward to, of course, the inevitable casting announcement of who will be playing Bond. I'm a little wary of Amy Pascal and the Sony Not a Spider-Verse. And so we'll see what happens. I hope that it still maintains the spirit. I know people can be doom and gloom about it's been purchased and it's now out of the hands of Eon, but still there's always hope. James Bond will return.
And
yeah, absolutely. I did want to say hello to the chat. Old Man Bird is here. Duran, Scotty R37, Cat, and Steve. It's going to be a phantasmagoric. It will. And Suzanne is here. Hey, Suzanne. It's good to see you. Slasher Fred is here. The name is Bond. James Bond.
Phantom Orgasmic, he wrote.
Phantom Orgasmic. It is Phantom Orgasmic. I thought it was Phantasmagoric. I'm so brainwashed by our own branding. Old Man Bird, very generous, and thank you for our Bishibo, our trophy-loving Bishibo. Thank you again for helping us keep the lights on and celebrating the Roger Moore-ness of tonight. We will try and live up to your generosity. I spy a Star Wars anti-heroes t-shirt.
Oh yeah, so you got Darth Vader, the white, and it's known as Emperor Palpatine. Then you got Darth Maul, you got Din Djarin with Grogu, you got Ahsoka at the bottom in the white silhouette. They're the sabers. Anakin. You got we got Millennium Falcon and TIE Fighters over here. You got Slave One over here, X-Wings, Scout Walkers, the orange ones on the side. So it's like and then the shadow of like the Imperial Walkers, but they're not there. So it's this was the Celebration Anaheim exclusive shirt. I had tickets. I didn't get to go. I got screwed out of it. It's a long story. But,
I remember that.
My relatives went and they bought me this T-shirt. So I thought that was cool with all the silhouettes of those characters. It's kind of neat. From afar, it almost looks like a bunch of random splatter. And then you get closer and you see it's got everything on there.
And Slasher Fred says, what makes the original James Bond movies so very fantastic is how cheap the special effects were.
Well, if they were effective, unless you meant also by affordable, then yeah, compared to today's effects.
Oh yeah, I'm somewhat baffled because as we have been with our other review series going through the Mission Impossible movies, there was an interview with Christopher McQuarrie that dropped, and they were talking about doing an extended flashback scene with Tom Cruise, and then Julia Roberts would have been the woman who is killed that sends him on his mission in life to be part of the Impossible Mission Force. And they said that if they had done like a 5-minute sequence de-aging Tom Cruise and Julia Roberts and Isai Morales, then that would have been like the budget of the movie, just in terms of the CGI that would have been used and the technology. It just would have been ridiculously prohibitively expensive to make. And so I am always sort of taken aback by the cost of what the digital effects are. I always thought that the digital would have been sort of implemented to make things cheaper.
Well, that explains why the budget of Dial of Destiny got blown up with all that de-aging in the first 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Well, and he said even like Macquarie said in relation to that, it was specifically because it would have been 3 characters being de-aged.
Yeah.
And so that's what the big deal was. And I know that, yeah, the de-aging, they didn't really de-age Toby Jones in Dial of Destiny, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Slasher Fred says, it's hard to imagine how this movie came out the same year as Friday the 13th, Part 5. And a year later, the 6th movie would parody the famous gun barrel intro during their opening credits. Kat, how are you a Friday the 13th aficionado?
Somewhat. I have the first 4 movies on Blu-ray Steelbook. I'm looking at them right now on the side there.
Nice.
Then the Best Buy discontinued Steelbooks. They were putting out one a year, and then they just packaged the rest of them and they stacked the discs in one big Steelbook for $5.30. I'm like, I skipped that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've seen Part 5 and 6, so I can't speak to that. I don't really remember all the release years. I know the original was 1980. I couldn't tell you what the years the others were released, but yeah. But that's neat. They did the gun barrel. That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. And it is, I know James Bond had already sort of permeated the pop culture lexicon, but I do like how wide ranged it is. It's not just from like Our Man Flint and In Like Flint and stuff like that, and ripoffs and Avengers and what have you, but how it does definitely get into places that you wouldn't expect James Bond to pop up, like when Roger Moore was in Cannonball Run kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've kind of been discovering some of his other films like that, and Shout at the Devil, and The Saint and stuff like that, and it's kind of fun to see him having done other things.
Oh, absolutely! Like, and even going like Wild Geese, and like he's done so many things, and I like it when he's not necessarily playing himself or some variation of Simon Templar or James Bond, but definitely a gentleman, to be sure, with all of his work with UNICEF, and then oddly enough with this film, he was not pleased with it simply because of the maniacal gunning down of the henchmen or the grunts. Henchmen, what is it? Daredevil said there's a difference between henchmen and something else. Henchmen believe goons. Goons are just there for a paycheck. Henchmen actually believe in the cause.
I would say they must believe in the cause, given what they were about to do in this movie.
I guess they were. Yeah, they were very aware.
I didn't get the impression that these people came from really far away. It's like, aren't your houses probably going to get wiped out too? Maybe not. But I guess Zorn lied to him and said he was going to give him a huge payday, because he may as well lie, because he's a millionaire, multi-billionaire or whatever. So wipes them all out with a machine gun. That's one of my favorite scenes, because it's just how maniacal Zorn is. And it's like, I don't recall rooting harder in a Bond movie for Bond to kill the villain after that. It's like, yeah, he killed a bunch of bad guys, but this guy has no honor. He has nothing. He has no allegiance, his loyalty. He's just that evil. That's why I love him as a Bond villain. He's so good.
Well, and that is, and I believe it was the first time that an Academy Award winner had ever played a Bond villain. The cast in this is fantastic. Obviously, we have Christopher Walken. I like Tanya Roberts, just because she is hot. But also, I do understand when people get upset with her because, James, don't leave me, constantly throughout the film. But obviously, we get the last appearance of Lois Maxwell, Robert Brown as M. Although they never really refer to him as M in this, they always refer to him as Admiral.
Yeah.
So just as a, I don't know why they made that particular distinction. Maybe it was a holdover from when Robert Brown stepped into the role after, the old Bernard Lee. See, it's been a while since I've been up to snuff on my James Bond conversations. So thank you for bringing this up, because I haven't seen View to a Kill in such a long time. So I did pop it in the drive before we started tonight. And yeah, I checked and I saw the rating for it. I think it's like a 36% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's like a 6.5 on IMDb. But I didn't think it was that bad. But I'm going to have to go in reverse order and check out the rest of the Roger Moores, because I did enjoy this. Although, as I mentioned in the intro, it is old Roger Moore.
Yeah, the audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes is 40%. He's definitely over the hill in this one, and you could tell that affected how they wrote the entire script. Like we said on our first review that you could see how if Timothy Dalton had been in this role, the whole script would have been top to bottom rewritten, and I think it would have been a much better movie. Because just imagine with the rest of the cast being pretty much the same, and how great that would be. I met one of the charms you get of older Roger Moore is you get the fun back and forth with Patrick Macnee from the Avengers as Tibbet. That was really funny, that whole thing. And yeah, we joked it's kind of like an episode of Murder, She Wrote with a Bond climax tacked on. But the stories of the movie were pretty funny. Like when they went to that French estate up north of Paris, Christopher Walken would just like walking around in the grounds, and they would lose him, and they'd spend hours trying to find him because he's just walking around the grounds. And so they would assign somebody to watch him. But then if they turned and got distracted by something, he would just be gone. A second later, have to go find him again.
Well, and that's like, and I think that's something that Bond fans have always sort of marveled at, or at least known the lore of, is that a James Bond movie was a production with like the finest foods, and the no expense was spared to go through all of the pageantry of it all, and how well Cubby Broccoli took care of the cast and the crew. And that's something that I don't know how it had been with Barbara Broccoli, if it had been that extravagant or as much of a family affair. But that I hope that's something that we still get to hear about in the Amazon years.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I doubt it.
Going forward, I don't think so. When we read the particulars of how that went down,
but that's sorry.
Yeah.
But the thing that did bring us to talking about this is you found an article, did you not?
I did. It was summing up how the 40 years, and the title was like Roger didn't get the joke, and they said he was aware of the fact that he was probably too old to be doing it, but he was still having fun doing it. Of course, in one of his memoirs, Bond on Bond, where he's reflecting on his years as James, he's writing about his fellow cast members saying all these wonderful things, and then it comes to Grace Jones, and he says, my parents taught me if you don't have something nice to say about somebody, then you don't say anything. So I'm not going to say anything, and he moved on. Wow. And the true story behind that was when they filmed the admittedly ridiculous sex scene between him and Mayday, she and the crew played a joke on him where they snuck this really huge black dildo in the bed. And he didn't think it was funny. Everybody else, she and the rest of the crew, thought it was funny. And he apparently never forgave her for it, which is too bad, because they said that Roger was a bit of a prankster himself. But maybe that was a different type of, too crass of a prank for his taste. And he said he also didn't like the fact that she would play heavy metal music like really loudly in her trailer, and he walked over there one time and actually went inside and unplugged the damn thing and chucked a chair out of her room because he was so pissed off.
Oh wow.
And it's like, oh wow, I didn't know Roger had that in him, and then so that was pretty funny, because it's like, yeah, it's the 80s, everybody's having fun. Like even Grace Jones got her boyfriend at the time, Dolph Lundgren, role in the film as one of the KGB agents, which was kind of neat, even though they should have used him really, but they didn't.
I read about that, and it was just a matter of he was visiting her on set one day, and they were down an extra, and it was like, well, do you want to do it? And he's like, I guess, sure, yeah. And so that's how is it his first on-screen role?
I don't know, actually. I'm not
100%.
I don't know the years of release for all the Rocky movies that had been out yet for 1985. But hello, Cinnamon Gulp in the chat. I sent a link into your messenger chat if you want to jump on. Yes, Slasher Fred, we do indeed know about the Casino Royale from 1967 with Peter Sellers. In fact, we reviewed it on this channel. If you go through the playlist, you will find it. We had fun with that.
Yeah, if this happens to be not your particular brand of martini, then feel free to go back through that playlist, and you can check out there are varying degrees of reviews. I don't know. Do we still have the what was the one that I got so absolutely schmammered? I forget.
That was Casino Royale, the first time we tried it in September 15th, 2021.
Yeah.
I remember that, and you were at your parents' house, and for some reason you were recording it in the bathroom, and you were pretty hammered, and I said, I think that's still on the channel, but I insisted we redo it, and eventually we redid it a couple years later.
We did redo it, yes. And I'm glad we did.
We've had other guests on. Like 5 months ago, it was just me and Tony reviewing the 50th anniversary of Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah.
And we'll have another big anniversary coming up in December for Thunderball, the Diamond Jubilee, if you will.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to write that down.
Yes.
When is that?
I believe that's December 21st, I think is the official date.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be a December video. I believe these are the only two. This movie, Thunderball and Spectre are the only three that release in a year with the five, with ending in 5. So as far as anniversary years go, because that's the thing. This November will also be 10th anniversary of Spectre. Which I don't think there's going to be much fanfare about that, even on the 007 website, but we'll see. Yeah.
Which is, I don't know. I kind of have a soft spot for it. I do like Madeline Swan a lot, and I like that flick, but there are definitely problems with it. But that is not why we're here today.
No, we are here to celebrate the fact that this was the last of the Roger Moore film. Think about it. We are 40 years on from the end of the Roger Moore era. How has that era sat with fans after 40 years? Do people look back at it better, or do they look back at it worse? I know that the fan base is a bit divided on A View to a Kill as well in terms of the diehard fans. There's some that absolutely love it and will defend it. Others just hate it. Oh, hey, DVB.
Hey, what's going on, Trip? Howdy ho, Kat and Scotty. Hope you're both been doing well. Very well. It's good to see you. Always a pleasure when you pop up, sir.
I remember first seeing this film on VHS that a friend gifted me. Lived down in Fremont, and it was a poster of him and Bond and Tanya Roberts on the Golden Gate Bridge with the very cartoonish looking drawing of Zorin in the leaning out of the Zeppelin with a machine gun. It's like, oh, this looks really fun. And as a kid, I loved it, and I still have a soft spot for this movie. I remember how they got the reason that it turns out that the fire engine scene is in the movie. It wasn't in the script originally, but the reason it's there is because Dianne Feinstein was so excited that they were coming to film in the Bay Area that she basically gave them the key to the city, and she's like, "Yeah, whatever you want to do, you could do it." So when you see City Hall on fire, that is them using gas lines and fire at the actual San Francisco City Hall that they got permission to do. And, they got permission to shut down the streets to do that whole fire truck chase and everything, which, of course, they would not have otherwise been able to do unless they had the permission. But that's the prestige that the Bond name carries. Like, as we saw with The Diamonds Are Forever, when Howard Hughes arranged for them to shut down the Vegas Strip to do the car chase in that film.
Yeah. Oh, well, and again, it's the locations, like we have Paris, Iceland, the Swiss Alps, San Francisco, obviously. Like it is a globe-trotting endeavor, and most of the time when they had those sort of on location shoots, it was an event and famously for You Only Live Twice, it was an outright zoo. It was people taking pictures of Sean Connery in the loo.
What?
So
I
people
don't.
do people
I
do
don't think
go
I heard
crazy
of this.
for it. You've never heard about that? Oh yeah.
No.
That was part of the reason why Sean Connery said, "Yeah, you know what? I'm kind of done," because they wouldn't leave him alone. Like the paparazzi at the time would just hound him everywhere. And then there was a moment where he was going to the washroom, and somebody went over the stall and took a picture of him while he was indisposed. And he was like, "You know what? That's it. F all this noise, Silent Bob."
Speaking of You Only Live Twice, this guy flew by in a gyrocopter twice while I was outside reading today.
Oh, nice. FKHC 2005, good to see you, says San Francisco is now a piece of crap. Yeah, Zoran could have actually flooded it and it would have been fine.
Read the one from DVB above that.
Fremont, California. MC Hammer used to live there. When he got famous, he bought an awesome house there. And when we became unfamous, when he became unfamous, he had to sell it. Yeah.
Which is crazy because Fremont is not like, I mean, yeah, by the standards of how insane cost of living in California is, it's way over the top, but it's not like a place that you would expect somebody with the wealth of MC Hammer to be living, you know? I mean, at that time. I mean, yeah, you'd have to be that wealthy to live there now because of how absurd the prices are, but the idea that it's like, when you had that money, would you really want to sell in Fremont? Okay.
Home is where the heart is. And thank you for bringing it up, Slasher Fred. If you guys ever watched the 1980s View to a Kill music video, it feels like a James Bond film, but in a music video. Yeah, Duran Duran with View to a Kill, the first James Bond theme song to go to #1 on the Billboard charts.
Yeah, excellent song, great melody. Did cause friction with John Barry working with them, but you know what? The results were great.
Well, and it's interesting because I was sitting there and I know that there have been times when I've watched a James Bond flick and it's like, wow, you guys are really getting your mileage out of the James Bond theme. And in this one, I don't think I hear it once.
It's a good point. You don't really hear it much, do you?
Well, and it is, and they sort of follow this up with the Living Daylights when that becomes sort of the motif throughout. You don't really get much of the James Bond theme, but it's still there. And they do that with View to a Kill here as the motif, usually when Stacy's around. But
because John Barry's more classical, percussionist and guitars and stuff, whereas the Duran Duran and Aha, it's much more electronic and doing very different things. And remember, this is the movie which also tried to popularize snowboarding with a Beach Boys song.
Yes. Well, and as we've mentioned on other reviews, James Bond tends to capitalize on up and coming trends, or like with the parkour and Casino Royale, and with this, they didn't even refer to it as a snowboarding scene. It was snow surfing, which is why you get California girls covered. And one of the most out of place things.
You would have thought that the better choice would have been, let's go surfing now for a Beach Boys song, given that was what they were trying to do. But, the movie's mostly set in California, so let's sing California Girls.
Might as well.
Let's see, Slasher Fred says, some of these Bond movies have pretty dark endings, like at the end of Her Majesty's Secret Service, when Tracy oh, yeah, they did. That was arguably the darkest ending for a Bond movie.
Yes.
That I can think of, absolutely.
Well, I don't know. Darker than Bond dying?
Well, yeah, because he still gets what he he still gets his what he wanted out of that, whereas this was just like horrible.
Yeah, that's true.
And Cinema Gulp says The Spy Who Shagged Me is my favorite Bond movie.
How about No?
I marathoned that trilogy back like 4 years ago now. Admittedly, it wasn't as great as I remember it being as a kid. We'd watch it at sleepovers and have fun with those movies. I remember going to see the third one on my 14th birthday. It was fun and funny at the time. Looking back on them now, I mean, I wouldn't mind if Mike Myers tried to go back and do a fourth one. Why not?
Well, I don't know if it would work. But yeah, if they can do legacy sequels with everything else, why not give it a shot? If they're doing another Naked Gun, why not do another Austin Powers? Yeah. No Time to Shag or something.
Slasher Fred says, speaking of MC Hammer, in the movie Batman Returns, during the costume party, they play an instrumental version of Super Freak which MC Hammer had sampled as "You Can't Touch This." Interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Slasher Fred, I have a theory that there are two songs. There's "You Can't Touch This" and "Super Freak," and it starts off almost the same, and you can be surprised as to which version it is. Also, same thing happens with "Ice Ice Baby" and "Under Pressure."
Mm.
And so, anyway, but yeah, that is interesting.
Here's one for you, Scott. He said FKHC 2005 says, so this is a prequel to Star Trek: A Voyage Home.
It actually, you know what? Oddly enough, it could be taking place concurrently.
Mm.
They just did. They left just before the blimp blew up.
My aunt used to live in Fremont back in the 90s. It's the only reason I know that. Yeah, I've got a friend who still lives down there. We've been visiting him down there for 30 years. Just went down there last weekend, actually. Snow surfing, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Suzanne, it is a pleasure to have you here in the chat.
Yes, absolutely.
So as you mentioned, we get the great Patrick McNee, who had been John Steed in the Avengers, which marks, I believe, the fourth cast member from the Avengers after Honor Blackman,
yes,
Diana Rigg, Joanna Lumley. And I'm trying to remember where Joanna Lumley fit in, but apparently.
Yes, you're right. She was in, it's at the tip of my tongue. Which one was it? See, I'm going to lose my Bond cred for this. For not knowing this. Let's see if the chat figures it out before I do. Joanna Lumley. That name is so familiar. Joanna Lumley. Let's see. I was about the British actress. She was in. Oh yes, I recognize her looking at her. She was in. Oh my God, which one was it? It was in Why is this? Come on, why isn't it mentioned the Bond movie at the top of the On Her Majesty's Secret Service? That's right. She was the English girl.
Oh, at Peace Gloria?
That's right, one of the girls. Yeah, I forgot. It's like, why do I know that movie? It's right, because she's not or not that name, because she's not a lead, but she was the one that he first goes to see and invites back into his room. So that was great.
Well, Old Man Bird in the chat says Christopher Walken and Duran Duran in the same movie, and I still can't remember the plot. Do we want to do a quick rundown on what the plot is?
It's basically a riff on the Dick Donner Superman movie, Old Man Bird, where Zoran is a microchip industrialist, but he's been hoarding microchips, and Bond can't figure out why. And the reason Bond is investigating is because 008 was killed in Russia, and he had one of those microchips in his possession, which meant there was something fishy about it. And they find out that even though Zoran's a millionaire, he's really petty, and he cheats at horse races because he can, using microchips to deliver a remote signal to give him, a shot of steroids and stuff to win his races. He finds out that he's trying to buy this woman out of her property in the East Bay of California. We find out that he's bought all the oil wells there, and he's pumping water in. And when Bond and Tracy, the woman he's trying to buy out, are going to City Hall and complaining about this, they're like, "Oh, it's totally safe. It's not a big deal." You can tell it's totally corrupt because he's buying them out. And what Zoran's evil plan is that he wants to he wants to drain all the lakes nearby, flood these wells from the San Andreas, and then flood the fault lines, and then set off a bomb. A massive bomb, like a whole mine he has going for this, which he puts his logo on all the explosives, which is just great. And he's going to blow up a massive explosion at the San Andreas fault line, combined with the fact that he's been flooding the oil wells and the floods with the water, means it's going to create like a 10-point magnitude earthquake, which will completely submerge Silicon Valley, and if not completely destroy San Francisco, which it would anyway, because of the earthquake itself would isolate. That would just cut that off and make it practically an island sunken onto itself. And the idea is that he would corner the microchip market because Silicon Valley is gone. Problem is, at the time they were filming this in 1984, the manufacturing base for these microchips had already been outsourced to, India and places like that. Yes, he would wipe out the headquarters, but he'd still have to be able to pull some strings, and he'd come out with a big bunco bucks and power and ego. And you find out that he's actually the product of Nazi experimentation after the war, which is like a very random thing which shows up and it's like, okay. And he's just a total psycho. and his girlfriend, played by Grace Jones, Mayday, teaches him his fighting skills in the dojo, and the movie gets a bit science fiction-y where we're meant to believe that he can pin down Grace Jones in the dojo, but that Roger Moore can stop, a 57-year-old Roger Moore can stop walking on the Golden Gate Bridge. So it's sci-fi. And then we have a Texas mining guy thrown in, oil man thrown in for good measure. The only thing he's missing is a cowboy hat and a big cigar coming out of his mouth.
Well, and he has the cigar when he's at the ranch.
That's right, he's at the party. Bob Connolly.
But is it? You say it, and you're accurately saying it's a riff on Superman in terms of destroying the San Andreas fault line and having San Francisco fall into the sea, essentially. But isn't it also kind of a riff on Goldfinger as well? It's like acquire, yeah, like it is.
Because he's based out of, because Zorn's based out of France and Goldfinger was based out of England, and whereas Goldfinger's case, he's irradiating near gold supplies. So his is the goes up in value, whereas Zorn is just trying to destroy all of the. Again, they were saying the microchip manufacturing, but the headquarters will wipe them all out. So he's monopolizes his microchips, and because he's been stockpiling it just tremendously goes up in value. So he can corner the market and sign big contracts and all of that. So yes, but it's and that's why, again, I mentioned that a classic Bond plot like this, like a Goldfinger plot or something, could have used a Timothy Dalton and that level of energy. Because one of the criticisms people have of Goldfinger, even though a lot of people put it on their favorite list, is that the entire second half of the movie, Bond's like in captivity, and there's not really much action. That movie lives by the strength of the four main characters of Bond, Goldfinger, Oddjob, and Pussy Galore. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, he's not in captivity. It's just that because he's so over the hill, and like 1985, 57 or 1984, 57 when they filmed it, not like 2025, age 57, which would look a lot younger. And so you can tell the whole movie is tailored to Roger's age. And so, again, if you had Timothy Dalton, this would have been better action sequences, probably a lot more badass. But, they did try and pull some other things into it. Like at one point, they were going to bring back Triple X from The Spy Who Loved Me for a scene where Bond tries to, she tries to seduce Bond to steal something from him, and he ends up playing her and winning. Maybe it was better that they didn't bring her back, because that kind of an awkward way to end it if they were to bring her back. Instead, they bring in a different female agent, Polly Ivanova, with, again, a very eerie, like, okay, she's way too young to be trying to seduce. I mean, yeah, I guess seducing an older man, that wouldn't be difficult for a hot young blonde to do that. But again, for Bond, it's like, I don't know, the same kind of thing. Like, as we know, Roger Moore famously said that one day, Tanya Roberts, I think, was 33 when she filmed this, and he was like 57. And one day she brought her mom to set, and he didn't realize this was her mom. He says, "Who is this?" And when she introduced her mother, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm as old as her mother. I have to stop." It's like older. It's like, I can't do this anymore.
Do you want to say hello to Daniel's Hot Topics? How are you doing, sir? Welcome. Oh my God, it's A View to a Kill's 40th anniversary. So awesome. It is. Yes. Old Man Bird says, I was going to say it's only California, but I think that's where Cat lives.
Hey, California's got a little bit of everything. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd still like to visit someday. I know that everybody says California is awful, but it's California. I just want to check it out and hopefully make it out alive.
We've got the Death Valley and all the deserts. We've got an area up north of Santa Rosa that looks like Switzerland or the Swiss Alps practically. And then you've got, the central farmland of Central Valley, the beautiful Central Coast, Hearst Castle. You got all sorts of history down in LA, to Hollywood, places to go exploring. San Diego, which has got like the best weather in the entire country. I just got back from a whole week down in Carlsbad, which is a resort town just 30 miles north of San Diego. It was awesome.
Nice.
And so, there's all sorts of places to see, and all sorts of different things in California, and different people involved. We even got a slice of it. They're probably still fighting the Civil War on the other side of the river here from where I live. It's not an exaggeration. A lot of sundown towns out there. Oh, wow. There's a bit of that. Big slice in the south up here, too, you wouldn't expect.
Daniel's Hot Topic says, Scotty, have you played 007 Everything or Nothing? It's the only 007 game with Pierce Brosnan voicing the character, and they got the likeness of Brosnan right, finally. Yes, I did play it back in the day when I think I played it on Xbox, just regular Xbox. And that had, I think, Willem Dafoe
It
was
did.
the villain.
I played that as well. They had that. I played it on GameCube, and they brought back Jaws for that.
Yeah.
You have the big car chase sequence on the Lake Pontchartrain. The game is great, and not only did Willem Dafoe voice it, I think he did motion capture for it as well. So it really is an all-out performance by him in the game. So it was fun.
Yeah. Well, and also thank you for reminding me, Daniel. In Everything or Nothing, Judi Dench was briefing Bond on Willem Dafoe's character, and the bad guy, because he was the bad guy, and Willem Dafoe was trained by Max Zorin. He was the protege of Zorin, and it was interesting. It was.
Mhm.
And that is one of those things that I wish I had never got rid of my old James Bond games, just because now they're like impossible to find. Like they're not available on the Xbox Live store, or I don't think they're available on the PlayStation store. And so those are, whenever I see them in like Facebook Marketplace and someone's selling them for like 10 or 20 bucks, I'm like, yoink, because you can spin them around pretty easy.
Yeah, I was actually at a retro game store in Sacramento yesterday, and they had the GameCube one, and it was used, but it was $24 because that's how rare it is to find some of these things in good condition.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
I still have all those games. I have my GameCube. I got an analog to HDMI adapter to plug into the TV.
Oh
I had to
nice.
use an HDMI extended strip because I didn't have enough ports on my TV, and maybe that's why the image was really dim compared if it was just plugged directly into the TV. But it was still cool. Kind of, some of it felt a little more dated than I thought it would to play it. Because I'm somebody who'll still play the original Doom game. I don't care how dated the graphics are. It's awesome because they
Sure.
kind of remastered it and stuff for Xbox, Series X. So you can play it. But for some reason, the old GameCube games, which aren't remastered, trying to play that on a big 4K TV, it just doesn't look as good. And I believe most of the Bond games were actually, like, with the exception of GoldenEye, was just made its way into Xbox Live. The rest of them, I think, got pulled recently from all of those, digital remasterings somewhat because the rights fell through or something, and I guess the company just didn't care to renew it or whatever.
I think it was like EA and Activision were doing it for the longest time, and when they lost their rights, there is a new Bond game coming out. But yeah, like Bloodstone,
Mhm.
Quantum of Solace, which is basically both
Yeah.
Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, uh, and then Nightfire, Agent Under Fire.
From Russia with Love, they also had a
Oh
copy of that at the store yesterday. I played
yeah,
that one. I liked that one. I played it even though, yeah, the reliance on machine guns and not having hand to hand combat is a bit disappointing. But
yeah, but it again the From Russia with Love game is famously the last Sean Connery performance of James Bond. So that's interesting. Although I do recall playing it and finding it auditorily somewhat jarring at the beginning because you had old man Sean Connery's voice coming out of a young man Sean Connery avatar. But you get used to it and you just get tickled by it either way.
oh, this is great from Daniel's Hot Topics. He says, "Remember when Judi Dench says to Brosnan's Bond in the game, 'You remember Max Zorin?' And Bond responds, 'Yes, we played bridge together. He lost.'"
Well, and
That's great.
I
I love
love
that.
I love that that sort of the Nazi connection
Mhm.
and his father or father figure, I guess, not his actual father, Carl. Carl?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that moment at the end when
Or no,
he
Hans Lau.
hands Lau and he's called Max, and just the absolute horror that is his creation or son was going to die, and then that weird little chuckle that Max Zorin gives, that Christopher Walken gives as he's just about to fall off the bridge. It's just I love that moment. I like that as the death of the villain. I
Oh,
thought
that
it
was
was really
something else
cool.
in the article. He says Walken says the reason he laughed was because, they built a smaller mock-up of that on the back lot, and they had all these boxes and everything down below for him to land on. And he was just sitting there and he just kind of laughed at kind of the absurdity or the fun of it. And John Glenn, the director, just liked it, thought that was a neat, yeah, we should leave that in there as a character quirk, have him laugh while he falls. And then you have the hysterical bit when Hans emerges with the big sticks of dynamite, and he's got that maniacal look on his face, like he's gonna throw it.
Oh yeah, which is the dumbest way to try and kill Bond as well.
Yeah, it's like, dude, because he ran out of bullets when he was shooting at him, and so I guess I'll just use like 26 of dynamite to get the job done.
Yeah, but I'm glad. But that was actually, it is. I think John Glenn, the director, as you mentioned, but he said that out of the James Bond movies that he directed, that was his favorite sort of major set piece.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it was sort of tackled by the second unit director, he was there on set because he did take the service elevator all the way up to the top to where they had been doing the stunts. And so he was very proud of that. And it does still make my heart skip a beat. I am terrified of heights. And so watching that, I'm like, every
got the
time.
guys up there to do it for real for the wide shots. And, and then it's like, and that was easily the best villain fight for the Roger Moore era for how to take out the villain at the end. And that was just really cool. How and seamless how they intercut the smaller version of it on the back lot with the actual bridge. But that was a really good fight, and the maniacalness of Zorn coming out, that he's just completely destroyed his plan. And I love his reaction when he sees Mayday coming. He's just like, and I'm thinking, worst case scenario, you come back 1 year later when the tides are back the way they are, and then you do it again,
Well, but see, at that point, he had kind of screwed up his own plan. Like by eliminating his own goons, by betraying Mayday, like that's really what did it. If he hadn't have done that, Bond, I don't know, Bond would have got away with Stacy, but I don't think that the plan would have failed.
You're right. That's actually a good point. It would have worked.
It would have worked if he weren't such a crazy person.
Yeah, and it didn't really make sense why he leaves Mayday down there because he's on a timer and he has to get going, and the other guys is just that they're liabilities, which is why he had to get rid of him. Hence the great scene when they're in the blimp and the one guy's, you want half our net income? And he's like, this is outrageous. And then they just throw him out. And I love how Mayday just puts on the sunglasses like a stewardess and just drops them out. I'm like, yeah, just hope nobody outside sees that and wonders.
Well, and I with Christopher Walken's performance, he goes from, sort of bemused and insane to he's charming in this. And it's like, does anybody else want to drop out? I love that line. I kept waiting for him to say yawn. And I'm like, when's he going to say it? Yeah. When's he going to say yawn? And it's like, no, that's from Batman Returns. Damn it.
Daniel, this is a good point, Daniel. He says, Mayday trained Zorn in her karate and kung fu, and yet he never used it against Bond. That's true. He just grabbed that fire axe and was just like going for it.
That would have been a cool Colonel Stewart from Die Hard 2 if he had come out and done like some jiu-jitsu movement with Bond. But Roger Moore's Bond was more of he was doing more kung fu stuff as well, right? That was more of his style.
Yeah, those type of fight stuff. And the Man with the Golden Gun, he does that a lot, of course. But yeah, they do that there, and then Zorn also to emphasize how sadistic and evil he is when he catches the KGB agent trying to plant the bomb in one of the fan blades, he just throws him down into it and chops him up to bits because he's just that. And then the guy inside is wondering why because he turned up the motor and it's not working. He's like, what? And Zorn's like, just give it a minute, and then it kicks back up after it chops the guy's body up.
Well, and I think that's interesting just in terms of the sort of the choices. And I know that this is a plot thing as opposed to, or like this is developed in the writing as opposed to with the direction. But it reminds me of the machine that busts up the drugs in License to Kill. And it's sort of the same sort of punishment. John Glenn did get a lot more of the more brutal kills for henchmen and goons. So, yeah, like I respect John Glenn for his contributions. Not my favorite Bond director, more of the workman, the journeyman Bond director.
Yeah, he directed all the Bond films in the 80s, though. I mean,
Yeah.
he was
Oh,
one of
yeah.
those guys promoted up within the family, and he did 5 of them. It's pretty good.
No, not a bad resume at all. I don't know what
Still
the
with us
rest of
too.
his resume looks like.
Yeah, I don't. I don't think he did. I think he kind of retired not long after that, but he's still with us, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
And DVB says, I don't like heights either, Scotty. I don't mind the heights that are safe. It's the unsafe ones that get me. Yeah, no, I don't like the safe ones either. I remember going to New York in Lake Placid on Whiteface Mountain, and we were up the mountain, and I was still terrified, even though I was on terra firma. It was, yeah, I was losing it. Daniel's Hot Topic says, whenever I see Christopher Walken, I think of Max Schreck from Batman Returns. Yeah. Well, and he has such a varied career. I celebrate most things that Christopher Walken does. Honestly, when I think of him, it would probably be this Batman Returns. I really liked his character in Catch Me If You Can.
yeah.
But yeah, and also in Click. For some reason, I do love him in
Yeah.
Bed Bath and Beyond. Oh yeah, so DVB says, like in the Space Needle in Seattle, it used to have a normal floor, but now it has a glass floor. F that. I ain't walking on no glass floor 600 feet up. Yeah, no, they do the same thing at the CN Tower. And so when I went to Seattle, we went up, and I had already been used to it. And I think the CN Tower is taller than the Space Needle, so I wasn't as freaked out about it.
There is something like that in the Grand Canyon as well, where you could
Oh, cool.
walk out onto this huge glass platform that just goes over this really high point in the canyon, but you got to pay like $70 to do it. Yeah. I remember when I stayed at the North Rim, I found this little this big stalactite flat top that I wanted to get onto, but you have to jump onto this one rock and then jump over to get there. And if you miss, it's like hundreds of feet down. But I did it anyway. Back then, I was able to do that with my legs and my feet, but I can't do that no more.
Well, and I've been watching scary videos on the internet, and there was an image of a place. I think it was in Thailand, but there was a bungee tower, and one guy was standing on the platform for the bungee tower, and he went and he walked up to the edge, and the people who were in charge of the bungee were like, hey, wait, no, because they hadn't hooked him up yet. And he just stepped off, plummeted to his doom. And it's like, yeah, man, never in a million years. I don't care.
Wait, where did that happen?
I think it was in Thailand.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in Asia. I'm going with Thailand. Daniel's Hot Topics has a great question in the chat. Was General Gogol a good guy? Confused me, because he was a Russian general and the Russians were the bad guys. So I was expecting for Gogol to betray Bond in MI6, but in his last appearance was in A View to a Kill. I respectfully correct you, sir. His last appearance was in The Living Daylights, because at the very end, there is that's when, what's her face? Miriam Dabo is playing the cello, and every Pushkin comes. Is it Pushkin? It's John Rice Davies, and General Gogol is there with Robert Brown. And so, yeah, no, I think that's his last appearance was in Living Daylights.
I think the way they portray him in this movie at the end is really ridiculous. That they're going to award Bond the Soviet Order of Lenin for killing Zorin, and he makes that joke where not M, but the other guy is like, well, I couldn't imagine what the Russians would have when the Russians have celebrated if Silicon Valley had been destroyed. And Gogol's like, on the contrary, where would Russian technology be without it? And obviously that's just a dig at Russia, and it's no, there's even if the plot of this movie happened in real life, there's no way they're giving him Soviet Order of Lenin. I'm sorry. But they like to show that Gogol is kind of, that they kind of white because it's, they want to have the characters sort of, bridging that. Like, remember at the end of Your Eyes Only when Bond has the decoding device and Gogol shows up and Bond just tosses it and breaks it, and he's flustered, and it's like, if that had actually happened, he probably would have got out his sidearm and just shot Bond right there. So it's a very whitewashed depiction, Western depiction of the Russian general, they'd be really nice to us and all that. It's like, no, it's the Cold War. You guys would be more enemies.
Yeah, but that's also, I don't like, of course, the Cold War was in full swing, but with The Spy Who Loved Me, they had brought together M and General Gogol. And as you mentioned at the end of For Your Eyes Only, where it's like, see what you did there, Bond, way to go. And it's like, yeah, okay, I guess that happened. And then in this one, like, they try and bring General Gogol back a lot as more of an antagonist and not necessarily as a villain. Like, he's not there to hurt anybody. He is still working with the British government to a certain degree, but not in the same way as like the earlier, like From Russia with Love, where it was like everybody was out to kill everybody else, and there was no.
Well, right, and also in The Spy Who Loved Me, it was clear that he actually has a friendship with M on a first name basis.
Oh yeah, was that the first time that you get to hear that it was Miles?
Yes.
Yeah,
and so they're actually very good friends. Which again, is it believable that the head of British intelligence would be buddy with the head of Soviet intelligence in the Cold War? No, not remotely believable. It's just a silly thing they did in these movies.
Yeah. Well, but that's also because of the the Roger Moore era with the lighter tone, still adventure and stunts and everything like that. But whereas Connery was a little bit harder as a cold-blooded killer, Roger Moore was more affable. And I think it was in an interview somewhere around, it was probably Spy Who Loved Me, where it was like, James Bond will kill you in cold blood, but he always wanted to infuse it with, he doesn't like to kill people. He'll do it,
right,
but it's not his favorite thing. Whereas with other Bonds, and I guess it's more, sorry.
In Roger's first two movies, he was a bit more, aggressive than in the but they quickly got rid of that in his later films.
Well, and I read somewhere that that Roger Moore felt that it was a little out of place when they were writing him like Sean Connery, and I think that there was something in The Man with the Golden Gun where he sort of backhands Maude Adams.
I mean, he nearly breaks her arm.
Yeah. And it's like, this is more of a Connery thing to do than it is a Moore thing to do, and so there was a decision with those movies to make them a little bit lighter, make them a little bit more accessible for general audiences. Just come out, have a good time for laughs, gadgets, and stunts.
Yeah, and even in the Live and Let Die, he threatens to kill Rosie if she doesn't tell him what he wants to know, and you could tell he means it, even though he's being very calm and casual, like in a Bond way. But he'll do it, And they very much moved away from that in the later portion of his era.
Well, and in For Your Eyes Only, that thing where the assassin, and he kicks the car off the cliff, and he's like, I don't think that Bond would do that, and it's like, are you serious? Of course,
like, yeah, he would. He definitely, he's got a license to kill. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
That guy was a great villain too. Actually, the very limited role, but he's great.
Yes,
the villain in that film.
Yes, it is actually, and I remember when we rewatched it, I liked it a lot, didn't I? Yeah, I did.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it a lot more than I remembered liking it, and I thought I was going to go into Octopussy and love Octopussy more than I had remembered it, and it actually took a step down. I remember being disappointed with Octopussy. Old Man Bird says, Kat, did women find Roger Moore attractive? What word would you use to describe him?
I don't recall ever hearing other people talk about him being attractive. I certainly didn't find him attractive, but I think that his appeal is that he's charming, he's chivalrous, and he's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's what women like about him. Like, oh, we love a guy that can make us laugh. And it's like, yeah, he can make you laugh, and he was, chivalrous, charming, all those types of things. I mean, Connery kind of referred to him as parody, but he's not really parody. He's just more of a gentleman than Connery was, for sure.
Yeah, well, and it seems that when you get to the Roger Moore era, that's really where it becomes just commonplace that anything that can be done, James Bond can do it. And case in point, with the snowboarding. I mean, it's like, oh, okay.
Right. And it's like, and that's kind of why I had a problem with the Lazenby as Bond, is because he was playing it like a rookie, like the way he's at peace glory and he's prioritizing how can I sleep with all of these women, and he feels too much like a a guy right out of college or something, but still in that almost frat boy type mentality. I just didn't. But it's like you don't feel like James Bond. Like Bond is somebody, like you said, he's more skilled, he's seasoned. Like Connery was, of course, more ruthless, but again, Roger Moore is very much a gentleman. And then we get to Timothy Dalton, and he's like, very much a more novel, accurate version of the character. He brings that darkness and that skill and that level that he has. And then Pierce Brosnan is a guy who's just born to be Bond. And then you get to the Craig era, which is its own other thing.
I like this just because I'm a Dogma fan, but thanks, Trip. Not to General Gogol, not to be confused with the Golgothan from Dogma. True story. Daniel says, yeah, Roger Moore was like the Silver Age Batman, more lighter and campy, more family friendly. Connery was like the Golden Age Batman, more action heavy. And Sean Connery was more of a stealthy assassin that would kill anyone without remorse or regret, without a second thought. Yeah,
absolutely.
And was it on Man with the Golden Gun where Roger Moore got all he was dissatisfied by the throwing the little kid over the side of the boat?
Oh yeah.
And so even those little flourishes that are kind of funny, anything that came off as being a little too mean-spirited, Roger Moore didn't like.
And the last thing I can remember chronologically that he did that was really in that vein was in The Spy Who Loved Me, when he's got Sandor by the tie and he just flips the tie out of his hand, and Sandor has him by the tie, and he flips the tie out of his hand and Sandor falls to his death. And the way Bond just does it in a very casual fashion. But I guess in that Roger might have been a little finer with that because Sandor was trying to kill him. But
yeah. Well, and that was also in Spy Who Loved Me when he confronts Stromberg.
Oh, that's right. He does, yeah.
And he is like angrily shooting at him, but he tries. Roger,
that's right. I did mention how that was particularly one of the most cold-blooded kills that Roger Moore has in his entire era, where he's just, you could see the rage in his eyes when he's doing it. It was almost out of character for the type of Bond he plays.
Yes. But there's a documentary that came out, I want to say like in the fall of last year, called Being Roger Moore or something like that. Mm-hmm. But it's a documentary about the life of Roger Moore, and it's narrated by Roger Moore. I forget the actor who does it. Oh,
Steve Coogan.
Steve Coogan. There you go. But because he does a really good Roger Moore impression, but it's basically taken from his memoirs, and they talk about it and how, he was that sort of suave, sophisticated, charming English gentleman. And yeah, I think chicks did really dig him, especially in his younger days. And then,
and the fact that they kept him around for 7 movies shows that he was quite popular.
Yes. Well, and I know that Lazenby did take over from Connery, but it wasn't really until Roger Moore took over for Bond that people were more accepting of that recasting. And so, I think that's sort of a credit to cinema history, just in terms of making a general audience come to grips with an act or a character being played by multiple actors. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Okay, I'm fine with it. And it's interesting because I went and I saw the Final Reckoning, the Mission Impossible Final Reckoning last night. And while I have grown to like Tom Cruise more, I never see anything except Tom Cruise. Mm-hmm. And when I was watching A View to a Kill, I do just see James Bond. It doesn't matter, even though and same thing with Dalton, same thing with Craig. I do see James Bond when I'm watching those movies, despite the fact that they've been recast so many times.
Yeah, that's true. And in this movie, they have the things where it's really obvious that they keep swapping out for a stunt guy at certain moments. They just weren't as careful with that this time. It's like, it's the 7th time around. Whatever, fans will accept it. Kind of like when you saw that really badass stunt in Octopussy. Which, again, those movies don't get enough credit. People talk about, like you mentioned, Mission Impossible and all the crazy stuff that Tom Cruise does. It's like, It's like, I'm sorry, did you guys see the end of Octopussy when they actually had the stunt guy, BJ Worth, outside of that plane at like, what, 10,000 feet or whatever, just hanging on for dear life? And yeah, you could tell it wasn't Roger Moore, even though it was supposed to be. And then he gets on with the other stunt guy on top of the planes. Like, they did that shit for real. You know, it was crazy. And same thing when, got a few years ago, that Uncharted movie came out, and they kept advertising the cargo net sequence, which was the fakest looking thing ever because it was all green screen. And I'm like, excuse me, guys, you're advertising this like you're so proud of it. But I remember that Bond did this for real in The Living Daylights in '87, where they had stunt guys dangling off an actual cargo net off a C-130 or whatever type plane that was. And it's like, yeah, they used to do shit like this. And that's one of the reasons these movies also had that pinnacle attention. But lately, it's like, you know, the latest Bond films don't really have those signature jaw-dropping stunts. And it's funny because even in those movies that I mentioned, you know, Octopussy or whatever, it's like they weren't framed like jaw-dropping stunts. They didn't over-advertise. It's just something that happens in the movie. It's like, oh shit, did you really just see that? And it's there. Like fighting on the Golden Gate Bridge, you could tell that those two guys were actually up there in the wide shots. It's like, oh my God, you know, unbelievable.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to take away from the Mission Impossible stunts, but I think because that is more of a return to classic cinema movie making styles. And when you go to see a movie, you do want to see the stunt performers doing it. And even when you find out, oh, Tom Cruise is actually doing that, and that adds to the tension and how impressive it is, especially when he goes flying helicopters and jumping off of mountains and on motorcycles and climbing stuff. But you're absolutely right. Like back in the day, it was, you would go to see a James Bond movie because you knew that there would be stunts. There's no other way you're going to be able to see a person ski off a mountain and then open a parachute unless they do it. And what are you going to do? Miniaturize it? It's going to look stupid. And
that was a huge stunt too. And The Spy Who Loved Me skiing off that mountain. My God.
For sure. Yeah, and so back to A View to a Kill, I really liked, I really liked it. The jumping off of the Eiffel Tower.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
When they parachute off the Eiffel Tower, and it's a funny thing that I read about. That was, they had two stunt performers. One was going to do it, and if they couldn't get all the shots that they needed, there was going to be a second jumper who was going to do his version of it. And they said, "No, you don't have to, because we got everything. It went perfectly the first time." And the guy did it and got immediately fired because it was like, James Bond will never be invited back to Paris. And so they had to, he landed and it was like, you're done. It's over. And he's like, whatever, I got to jump off the Eiffel Tower. I'm happy.
Yeah. Because that was the thing in particular. It was very difficult for them to get permission to jump off the Eiffel Tower because they had, you see it in the movie too. They made no attempts to try and disguise it. They put the big, the diving board, if you will, off the tower that's not actually there, of course, for the jump. And B.J. Worth had to fire the guy on the spot, and he was banned from working on any other Bond films, and it probably affected his ability to get other stunt jobs. But he's like, "Hey, man, he jumped off the Eiffel Tower."
Yeah.
And they had to, and they were not, the Parisian authorities weren't really excited about granting them permission to jump off the Eiffel Tower to begin with. So that was really difficult, and that put Cubby in a really difficult position. So that wasn't good. But again, it's a great, and especially since they weren't filming that guy when he jumped off. They were actually sitting down below, setting up, and the guy, boom, going down, and they knew exactly what it was. And they're like, shit. But again, the real one, that's a great stunt. I mean, it does sound a little weird when you first see it. It's like semi-slow motion when you see Mayday jumping off, and you hear her make this grunt like, and she's jumping, and then but again, you can tell it's a legit jump for real. It's like, that's really cool.
But then it's sort of, it is followed up with one of the most ridiculous car chases of all time, when that cab gets cut in half and it's still going. That's again,
and then they end the whole thing with a parachute on a joke where it, he lands on the boat and knocks over the wedding cake, and the chef comes after him with a butcher knife.
Yeah,
and then seizes him, and he's still got the knife, like he's gonna actually kill the guy.
Well, and wasn't there a deleted scene where M goes to pick up Bond from the police station, and he's like collecting all of his or giving back all of his gadgets and whatever? There was Yeah, there was a cute little deleted scene. So the Roger Moore era did certainly lean a little bit more into its silliness. Oh, and I did notice there was, because that's again another long running gag when it comes to the Roger Moore era. There is the drunk guy outside of the San Francisco. It's not the drunk guy, but it is a drunk guy, a wino, homeless wino hobo outside of City Hall, and applauds when Bond carries down Stacy. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I forgot. Every Roger Moore James Bond movie has to have a drunk guy being like. Mm.
And he had even a little story in that chase sequence with his rivalry with the police captain, because he'd ran into him before. He's like, yeah, and he's like, I'm a Secret Service agent, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, and I'm Dick Tracy, and you're still under arrest. And he just douses him with those. And then you see him later in the movie driving in the cop car and looking out and seeing Bond dangling from the blimp. And he just can't believe what he's seeing, and he causes a car accident.
Yeah. Well, and again, and more another sort of shade of a San Francisco J.W. Pepper kind of thing.
Yeah.
But now that you mention again, Zoran's an idiot, but well, maybe not an idiot.
That's another look at Zoran's sadism too, or even Scarpine. Scarpine was another good henchman in that movie that he doesn't get much to say, but he's there. And even Hans Lau is thinking that the fact that Zoran wants to smash Bond into the tower, and the way he's laughing, like, haha, this is so funny. And even Hans is looking at the guy like, actually legit worried. Like, maybe we're going too far. Which is weird to say, because when they overlooked Silicon Valley, and he's like, Zoran's like, the greatest cataclysm in history, and Hans is like, and all attributed to natural causes, and he laughs, and it's like, oh, so you're fine with that. But seeing Zoran try and smash Bond into the Golden Gate Bridge, oh no, that was too much.
Well, but at that point, his entire evil scheme has sort of fallen apart, and I know I've seen A View to a Kill, like I've probably seen it about 4 or 5 times now, and it doesn't make sense for him to want to hit Bond off of that rope with the Golden Gate Bridge, because I was like, of course he just ties the rope to the bridge, you idiot. So it was an odd, maybe it's because I know who James Bond is, and I was like, yeah, this isn't gonna work. Daniel says, I wish they would have had that scene in Die Another Day where Sean Connery Bond would have bumped into Pierce Brosnan Bond. I assume M would have sent Connery Bond if that scene would have been filmed. You know, I get a bad feeling about having multiple Bond actors in the, like, when they're talking about bringing back Pierce Brosnan, like if that's on the table, it's like, I don't want that, really. I don't want to see that. And it was kind of a possibility in Skyfall where Connery might have played Kincaid at the end, but then went to Albert Finney. And I think it would have taken me completely out of the movie if it had been if you could have had Lazenby, Moore, Connery, Dalton, any of them. But it would have taken me out of the flick, just been like, wait a second, my brain is broken. And
if you're having him be Bond, that would be endorsing the codename theory, which no. It's like, we've already talked about how these movies are very loose with continuity. It's like, yeah, we know that in For Your Eyes Only, Bond goes to Tracy's grave because they're trying to provide closure with Blofeld, but they had that ridiculous scene where he scoops him up with a helicopter and dumps him down the chimney stack. And that was their way of ending that storyline, and the reason that they have him go to Tracy's grave is to make sure fans make the connection. Because for some reason, I mean, in Diamonds Are Forever, they do make it clear in the pre-title sequence, the worst one in the franchise, for my money, that Bond is obsessively trying to find Blofeld. So it's a continuation of the Majesty's continuity, where, he kills Blofeld at the end, presumably. But they felt, now let's make a more personal ending where Bond gets to personally kill him with the helicopter. And that was, we talked about how just bad that whole thing was, because that was just Cubby being bitter that he didn't get their rights back. But, but my point overall being is that we're not going to endorse the code name thing by having other Bond actors come back to play, hey, I'm James Bond, and then the fourth wall breaking aspect of it, and it would take you completely out of the movie. So,
and I don't know if it's something Daniel, if it's something that you would have liked to have seen, I can understand it. I don't think it would have. I think it would have just melted my brain too much. Old Man Bird, continuing to support
Nice.
us.
Thank you.
We a laughing pair. Thank you so much, sir. You're too kind, too generous, and you're keeping the lights on. So thank you. Daniel says we could have had the Bond Vengers, all the Bonds teaming up in a shared universe. Yeah, the multi-Bonds. One of the biggest regrets of Academy Award history is that I wish that they had done something when they were all still with us. And we could have had Connery, Moore, Dalton, Lazenby, Craig. Am I missing anybody? I don't think so. That would have been great. But to do some sort of tribute, and Brosnan. I am missing Brosnan. My mistake. But yeah, I think that would have been my favorite way to see them all together. And I know that there are like clips of Connery and Moore on stage with Michael Caine at the Academy Awards, but I think that would have been great. Also, is the name of the James Bond documentary that they released around the 50th? Was it Everything or Nothing?
Yeah.
If you guys haven't checked it out, it is a treasure trove of behind the scenes, talking to the actors when the actors were all with us. Beautiful insight from the men themselves. So if you do want to see sort of a multiverse of James Bond through the years, that is definitely worth it. I think it's on Amazon Prime.
I think you're right. Yeah, because I never saw that, and I think that's why.
But it's definitely if you're looking for your Bond fix. Now I don't know if the special features from this disc are on the Blu-ray or any, but I have my classic from the box set, and it's got the great special features. Sorry about the glare. I can't make it not do that, but
I still got that one.
But this was fun because I got to, and it's got the liner notes, which is lovely, just to be able to have this to thumb through. I didn't even have to do research. It just came with all my bullet points right here. But it just absolutely glorious from I think it's the first 20 James Bond movies.
Yes, the 3 box sets, the 3 volume box sets they did, yes.
And just absolutely glorious.
I have a couple copies of that because the same friend from Fremont gave us his DVD copies later on.
Nice.
But yeah, and speaking of Bond physical media, I got the pre-ordered 4K steelbook set of the Sean Connery films coming next month, June 16th, I believe.
I'd be interested to hear your take on it.
Oh yeah, I look forward to receiving it.
Just in terms of the transfers.
Oh, the digital versions I've seen are remarkable. They blew my Bond 50 Blu-ray set out of the water. So I'll be excited to see the disc versions, which won't have to be dealing with internet issues for that. So that'll be really nice.
Yeah.
But and I understand there will be bonus features on them. I'm not sure what yet because they didn't give the rundown. The cover art is we'll do a special video, like a unboxing video when I get it. It'll be fun.
Sure.
But yeah, and this movie was also the one where we have, Bond has the ally in the CIA who shows up, and he's the one for some reason who has the information about Zorn being a Nazi. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll come and meet you to exchange the important information at Tracy's house later on." It's like, or you could just follow him back to his work right now to the CIA office to get the information instead of going back to Tracy's house where they had this very weird fight where she's got her shotgun loaded with rock salt, and Bond has to fend them off with it. And it's kind of funny that so Zorn's sending actual goons over there to attack her or intimidate her, and it's like, she could file a lawsuit and there'd be evidence probably, and that'd not go well for Zorin.
Well, and that's I think that's just sort of to inject a sense of her safety being threatened. But yeah, if you give a person a check for $5 million, and then you send your people to go and like, what were they going to do had Bond not been cash the check?
Yeah,
It's like,
it's a very 80s type of sequence, isn't it?
yeah,
But
but
yeah,
I still dig it. Yeah, that was originally Lee was supposed to be Felix Leiter,
that's
but
right.
because of the San Francisco locale, they wanted to take advantage of sort of the Asian population,
Mhm.
which is forced diversity. So View to a Kill is woke.
But that was also the movie where Maud Adams went to visit the set when they
Yes,
they shot the scene meeting him down at the wharf, and she didn't end up in the movie. They ended up cutting it. People scrutinized every frame. She's not in it.
right.
And she
I think her
remembers what she.
husband is.
He might be.
Yeah,
I can't recall, but she insists that because she remembered what she was wearing, and fans thought she was the lady with the big sun hat walking on the dock. But then she's like, "No, that's not me." But settle the.
yeah, and but yeah, she was there. And this is something that I didn't realize until today when I was looking stuff up. Is that the original writer wanted Zorin to actually manipulate Halley's comet into crashing into Silicon Valley, and then Michael G. Wilson was like, "No,
Yeah,
no."
no, that's no.
But they
Uh,
were never afraid to go with the fantastic. But I do like how they would pull back and keep things more grounded, even though it was still fantastic. It was like, can we make it somewhat believable? We already had a space station, all right.
yeah, we've
So
already done that. One of the other highlights of this movie is I like how when Bond and Tibbet go undercover, that he's St. John Smythe. The whole thing is that he treats Tibbet like shit. It's just so funny, and Tibbet just kind of groans and gets tired of it, even when they get inside the room, and they know the room is bugged. So Bond takes the pre-recorded tape of him just berating Tibbet, and Tibbet saying yes, sir, and just taking it, and they just sit it on the desk and play. And I thought, and they go out onto the balcony privately, and Tibbet's like, "How long do we have to keep this up?" And Bond kind of gives this little knowing smile because he's enjoying the fact that Tibbet hates it.
well, it's funny that someone brings up the voyage home. Is like there is that part where Dr. McCoy is playing the part of being Scotty's assistant, and then as it's a scene transition, and it's like, don't lose yourself in the part, kind of like smacking back at him. It's like, you don't get to abuse me just because you're pretending to be my boss. And it's the same kind of vibe with that. But when they do have the recording, it always, whenever I hear these things, it's like, I wonder if they just like in time for their prep, they just sat around and made a bickering audio cassette, and that was their deal. How long did they have to sit there and pretend to do that, knowing that they were going to play it back in a couple of hours? The prep that is involved in being a secret agent sometimes would be tedious. There you go. Daniel's Hot Topic says Bond always keeps it up, keeping the British end up. So Daniel says they should have swapped From Russia with Love with Dr. No, the superior movie, in my opinion, and my favorite Connery Bond flick. A lot of people dig on From Russia with Love. I think that's the last time when it was actually somewhat a believable spy thriller, and then it turned into superheroics once we get to Goldfinger.
Yeah, I admit I prefer Dr. No to From Russia with Love, but now when you say they should have swapped it, do you mean the From Russia with Love should have been the first movie they made because it's your favorite? Is that what he's saying?
I think that's what it sounds like. I could be mistaken, but
yeah,
he does say it's superior to Dr. No. I still like the progression. Yeah. Oh, and there you go. Yeah. He's siding with Connery. Daniel says Connery's favorite movie or Bond movie is From Russia with Love.
That's true. A lot of people's favorite Bond, like Craig's favorite Bond movie is From Russia with Love. Kennedy's favorite Bond novel was From Russia with Love. Mm-hmm. They actually brought a film reel of it to the White House for him to watch it in the month before the assassination. I know that a lot of people still look back at From Russia with Love, say that's their favorite. But you could see Scotty and I our thoughts on it if you scroll back through the Martinis, Gadgets, and Guns playlist where we did a video on it.
Yeah. But it's so long ago, I have no idea.
Oh, that's right. It probably doesn't even say From Russia with Love review in the title. So it's the second video in the playlist, the second chronological video where it'll say that we're ranking something, and in that we do the From Russia with Love review.
Yeah, like, and it is interesting to go back and see those earlier reviews, because we were still sort of playing around with the format. We hadn't gone to a strict single film. We were mixing it up with something else. But
we were doing all of our rankings for different things, like our favorite villains, our favorite layers, our favorite cars and gadgets, and the women and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but it's really, it is interesting to traipse down memory lane. Sometimes I pop them on when I'm doing stuff. Daniel's Hot Topics says I have volume 3 of the Bond movies on VHS, which includes Diamonds Are Forever, You Only Live Twice, A View to a Kill, Octopussy, and From Russia with Love. Yeah, those VHS box sets were weird because it wasn't chronological. It was like a Kellogg's mixer pack of, okay, you get this, you get Dr. No, you get what you get a Connery, you get a Lazenby, you get a Dalton.
That's what he meant. He clarifies. He says, no, I meant they should have swapped Russia with Love and Dr. No in the volume 3 VHS box set of 007, which I got at the mall back in the 90s. I was so happy. Okay, that's what you mean. They did the same thing with the DVD set that Scott showed earlier. It was like a mixed bag of movies. Instead of putting all the Connery and then the Lazenby one in one pack of 7, it was mix and match. And then instead of putting all 7 of Rogers in one, it was mix and match. And then same with Dalton, because one of the box sets had 6 movies in it, which stands to reason that you could have put, the Dalton and Brosnan films in that box set, and then split up the other 7, 14, like I mentioned. But they didn't. It was always, they wanted to give you a sample set of everything, I guess, to make it more fun, or it actually helps spurn sales, I think, because let's say if Roger Moore's not your favorite Bond, you like Connery. Well, they're going to make you buy multiple box sets to get all the ones that you actually want.
Yeah.
And that's a marketing place. No sooner than I got all 3 of those box sets did I rearrange them chronologically.
And I completely forgot about that until you mentioned it right now, because I obviously went up to the box sets and went like, okay, I know where that one is. But yeah, they would have been completely mixed and matched, because they did. It's like, and because there's been more of a renaissance when it comes to On Her Majesty's Secret Service or the Dalton ones. People were like, why would I want to get the Dalton box set? And it's like, because they're pretty good. And it's like, not at the time. People didn't dig it at the time.
Yeah, that would be like the 3 film box set with what they back then would have been considered the rejects.
Yeah, exactly. Here's your C tier.
We'll make it so apparent how much we think it's a reject that we're going to cut a distribution deal to get the Never Say Never Again and Woody Allen Casino Royale put in the same box set. 5 movies.
Yeah.
No, they didn't do that, but I was just kidding.
Well, no, but they did do something in regards to that with the Blu-ray set, didn't they? They said it was like, this is the complete Blu-ray set of all the James Bond movies, and then someone said, well, where's Never Say Never Again? And
that's
then
a different thing. It's that's not Eon. So
no, it was a different studio, but because there was something about it, and it was I don't know if they sued, but they eventually they released a digital code for Never Say Never Again.
Was that still MGM? Did they even have the ability to do that?
This is what I remember, and I was like, and it was after I had purchased like the Blu-ray box set, the one with just the white covers. Right. And that was the one, and it was like for the first time, all the James Bond movies in one place, and they said, well, no.
I don't see how that wouldn't get thrown out immediately just on the basis of, hey, it's a different studio. It's all of our Bond movies. There you go.
Yeah, oh, totally.
By the same logic, they would have to include a code for Casino Royale.
Yeah, and have it as a special feature to get the Barry Nelson.
That one too.
Which we also reviewed. Yeah. So I look back fondly on the Roger Moore era I do enjoy his take on Bond. And as I've said before, and I will say again, to high heaven, is James Bond movies are kind of like pizza and sex. Even when they're not very good, they're still pretty good. I enjoy and celebrate, and there's always something in the classic Bond movies to sort of celebrate. If it be the double taking pigeon, California girls snow surfing, any Christopher Walken, like
epic all-time Bond villain.
All-time Bond villain. Like it's so good. And then even that's Daniel, you bring up something interesting in terms of seeing Brosnan and Connery on screen together. But at the time, like I remember that this is how I found out about the Avengers, like the British television show. Because my dad, when we rented this from Canadian Tire, and we had to rent the VCR as well, because we didn't have one of our own. And we rented it and we watched it. And my dad was like, and that guy right there, he's on a different British spy show. And it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so that would make me seek it out. And so this is kind of like two of the heavy hitters of British espionage entertainment, which is just, it would have made, and it did. It made my dad go nuts in 1985. So you do get the crossovers that you get. Maybe not the ones you want, but the ones that you deserve. I think I've said everything that I want to say about A View to a Kill. Do you have anything that you want to continue with?
No, I think I just have more childhood nostalgia for this movie. I've certainly seen it more than 5 times.
Okay.
A lot. But yeah, I think it's a fun movie. And man, I think it's been 40 years since that came out. It makes me feel old.
Yeah.
That came out just 3 years before I came out. Jesus.
Yeah. I'm 7 years older than it.
Yeah. That. But yeah. Cheers to the late Mr. Roger Moore, who was such a great guy, apparently, that Christopher Walken actually participated in that documentary last year. He's like, yeah, I really don't like doing these things because it's like, I don't talk about it. Just do a job and move on to the next thing. I don't really think, like, anytime people ask me, what drew you to this role? It's like, the money, the location, that it was good people that were going to work with. And he's like, no, but Roger, I was drawn to participate because Roger was a really great, really nice guy. You don't meet people like that very often in that industry. I thought that was really special. So I do eventually want to see that documentary.
Me too.
But yes.
And maybe that's something that we can put on the schedule and take a look at that documentary and go over the life of Roger Moore. I think that'd be kind of fun.
It would be, yeah, I think so.
All right. Daniel's Hot Topics says, I rented game systems like NES and Super Nintendo and Sega in the 90s, but I never knew you could rent a VCR. Oh yeah. Top loaders too. and that was the thing, is that when I was renting the game systems like you did, they were coming in the VCR bags that they used to have for the VCRs, but when it became affordable for consumers, they were like, well, we don't have anything to do. And so that's how I got a Nintendo. Like once every 3 months, we could rent it for a weekend and play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the entire time, because it was an impossible game to beat. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for being in the chat. Absolutely glorious that you guys could sort of hang out and celebrate the 40th anniversary. Old Man Bird, of course, thank you so much for being here and supplying such generosity and appreciation for us, man. It is flattering and gracious. Thank you. Suzanne, always great to see you. Slasher Fred, Super Fabu, welcome, and thank you again. Cinema Gulp, thank you for being here. I will see you next week, I'm sure, for Hump Day Happy Hour, but it was serendipitous that tonight was a night off for us over at Your Hood, so we got to talk about A View to a Kill here. DVB, thank you for poking out your head. FKHC 2005 with travel tips from San Francisco. Thank you again. Yeah, I think that's everybody. And Daniel's Hot Topics, of course. Don't forget, I know you're all subscribed, so I'm not going to say don't forget to like and subscribe, because you probably are already subscribed and you probably already hit the like. But you can check us out on X. We are at Fantasmagoriums, and you can find out what's happening on a weekly basis. For the next 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the final, Dead Reckoning and Final Reckoning, the last two of the Mission Impossible films. And then going into the future, we'll figure out what we're doing. But as Kat is amazing and is always willing to talk about James Bond whenever an anniversary comes up, or anytime that we have any news or just even a desire to talk about James Bond, it is a good time.
I did forget to mention, this was the last time that we had Lois Maxwell as Moneypenny.
Yes.
40 years of beyond from her era, and she was great too.
Wasn't she the only one who was in every movie?
In the first 14, yeah.
Yeah.
And I still am bitter about the fact that they ended her run of Moneypenny with her crying, thinking Bond is dead. It's like, no.
Yeah. She should have had something a little bit better. But
that would have been great if that scene ended with Bond coming in and tossing his hat on the rack or something, or bringing her a bouquet of flowers. That would have been great.
Yes. Well, but also, don't forget, like, because it was Roger Moore's final one, Moneypenny sort of mourning the loss of Roger Moore. That's kind of fitting.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, DVB. These shows should deserve more viewers for sure. Oh, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. But yeah, I forget. Oh, right. I don't forget. I know exactly.
I had a fully functional VCR up until just last year when we had to get it all ripped out because of problems and all that kind of thing, and then we upgraded to other things.
Well, it's funny. I've been going thrifting. Like, I always go and try and pick up cheap DVDs and Blu-rays because they're like $3 or $5 for those. But I've been going, and the thrift shops are now starting to carry old VHSs. So, and I'm like, well, that's kind of neat. If I had a VCR, maybe I should take a look and see, because there's a lot of media that you can't get on DVD or Blu-ray that is only available on old VHS. But it would be something that you have to test out. I don't know. I'm sure that I have other things on my list of things to do that I should. But I guess until next time, Kat, it is James Bond will return.
Absolutely.
See you later. Thanks, guys.